Welcome back, everyone. This is episode 3 of How to Play Jazz Standards, and today I'm doing a Latin jazz standard called Blue Bossa by the great Kenny Dorham. You may know probably I'd say the most famous recorded version from Joe Henderson's Page 1 album, which is a wonderful classic album. Also has Recordame on it, which is another well-played standard, frequently played. But Blue Bossa, I feel like, is a great choice for getting this series into Latin jazz, which I picked up from a lot of your comments because a lot of people seem to be interested in that. So I'm gonna do what I've done throughout this series so far, which is just approach this tune as I would. With all the years that I've spent playing standards, just imagine you came over to my place, or I went to yours, and we sat down at the piano for an hour, and you said, hey, I'm working on Blue Bossa. Show me some stuff. What would you do? Give me some motivation, inspiration, some ideas. This will be that lesson. Hey, I want to let you know that you can click the link below to access my 30-day trial to Pianote, and that gives you access to the member area where there's tons of awesome features to level up your playing. You can speed up things, slow them down, even change the key. So please go there now, that link's below. Starting out, the first thing we always have to do is learn the tune itself. The melody, of course, is the first goal because that's sort of the soul of a song, is its melodic content. The harmony is very important too, but the melody gets us into the spirit of it, and it's a great vehicle for us to start talking about Latin jazz in general. And just taking it all the way back to square one, or page one, is the main difference between a more Latin jazz style, in this case a bossa, or a swing, is not necessarily that one swings and one doesn't, because bossa has a swinginess to it too, but it's way more what we call straight eighth feel, where, just for an example, if I were to play the changes to Blue Bossa as a swing, as just a classic spang, spang-a-lang triplet kind of swing, it would be like, you know, that kind of bop, but this is more, you know, and if you listen to the recording, you hear how McCoy Tyner is comping behind the melody and the solos. That's kind of the feel, generally. There's this 1 to 5 bass. That's the basic idea for the bass, kind of this 1 to 5 kind of thing. And the piano, the comping is very staccato and very much on the off beats. But it's not, you know, but it's more the kind of basic bossa rhythm on drums. It's like, but because of the accents, it still has a swinginess to it, right? That's still part of it. It's not so straight boxy. There is that feeling, and that's something that you can analyze to death, but better is just go listen to it. And you'll hear what I'm talking about. So it's not just words, just word vomit coming out of my mouth, but you actually connect it to what you hear when you listen to these recordings. So if I were to take it a little bit slower, you know, so, you know, just I want to do this now just because we're already here. I'll just get an iReel and play along. I've got it at 160 BPM. And we're not into the melody or playing the tune or anything right now. We're just talking about rhythm. And just listen to, I'm already starting to play some more complex chords, but I'm going to try to just read the symbols on the page for now. Just keep it simple. But hear the comping rhythm, the rhythmic style of this. I locked in a little bit better as I was going. I haven't played with the track a lot today. And I was also kind of trying to listen to the cross stick rhythm on the drum track, which is different than what I think is on the recording generally. But it's okay because, you know, it's interesting, this sort of school of playing. Latin jazz and styles are something that you can be very general about, and there is a whole deep dive on how to play these kinds of styles on every instrument. And when you really look at the cultural background of where all these influences came from before they merged with jazz, I mean, if you just do any kind of search online right now, you could go down an infinite rabbit hole on these kinds of styles. The point, though, is not to become an expert on the history of this kind of music and how it merged with jazz, unless you want to. The main point right now is to play blue bossa. And you want to play it in a style that is fitting for where it came from, how it's been played, how it was recorded, getting into the essence of what just this song is, right? Without needing all the rabbit holes. But of course, this whole channel is kind of a rabbit hole, so what the heck do I know? But anyway, I'll just do it one more time, just give you a taste of that, maybe try to lock in a little better. The kind of main thing, and you can hear I'll just play the track, listen to the drums. Just listen to the cross stick pattern on the drums. So I'm already starting to get into my stuff, but the rhythm is what we're talking about right now. There's lots of offbeats. Doesn't mean you can't have a couple long chords, land on a downbeat every now and then, but this is the spirit of it, right? Okay, so we've got a bit of the lay of the land for the rhythmic profile of this tune, of Blue Bossa. But let's talk about the melody. It's a pretty accurate version here from whatever real book this was. Even the articulations are generally right if you listen to the way the horn players play it in the recording, because it says as played by Joe Henderson, so the way that Kenny and Joe play it. And I'll just go ahead and give myself a little count and just play it by itself. There is an intro to this. By the way, I'll just say McCoy's intro is beautiful. It's awesome. It's not written out here. I'm sure there are transcriptions of it out there. You could always challenge yourself to try to learn it. I mean, I'll be honest and say most of the time I've ever played this tune or heard it played, people usually don't play it. That's not necessarily inherently good or bad, but hey, you know, if you're playing this with your group, maybe doing some type of formal concert of jazz material, consider learning it. It's great. It's beautiful. It sets the tone for the tune in a great way, so go check it out. But I'm just going to focus on the song, the melody that is presented twice. It's usually played through twice because it's so short, 16 bars. We double it, gets it to the length of a normal 32-bar standard, which is kind of the normal length you find, the most common length. So here's Blue Bossa. That's about that 160 tempo. 1, 2, 3. So there's dynamics. I'm snapping and singing. I'm trying to put some dynamics. The most important thing is to pay attention to where the short notes are. It's not. It's not connected. I mean, it won't sound bad if you play it that way. But, you know, let's respect the recording, the composer, Kenny, the way he played it. That's probably the way. And I think it works best because those kind of crisp, short articulations are part of what gives us the... That's part of the flavor, so... Now I'm starting to straighten it out. It's da, da. It's not downbeats. It's 1, 2, 3, ga, ga. All of those. Bum. And 3, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. So that's very important. So that's the tune. It's very simple. One of the things I love about it is there's not a lot of chromaticism other than changing keys because we start in C minor. But then the bridge, you could call it, which really is just 4 bars, we modulate to D flat, 2, 5, 1, and D flat, 2, 5, 1, to D flat. And the melody doesn't need to do anything crazy to make that modulation. We just simply change scales. We go from a more C minor kind of sound, really kind of C natural minor or C Aeolian, depending on what you want to call it. So E flat, A flat, B flat. That's the flat 3, 6, and 7. That's kind of the main sound of the melody. That's that scale. But then when we go to D flat, we've got to change some additional notes. So now, we also need a D flat and G flat. So we get D flat major, and the melody is just straight down the major scale. But I love that 4th scale degree on the D flat, which if we're thinking just in D flat major, remember we count the notes of the scale to talk about scale degrees, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to the root. So 1, 2, 3, 4, G flat. It's so beautiful. It's just so beautiful. I really love that so much, but like in a deeper emotional way than I can describe with theory. I just like it. Oh, and also at the end, just because I see it on the page, there's just nice harmony that they break into. Just a little 2-part harmony, but. And I also love those perfect fourths. The stacked fourths in the melody that happens, the melody plus the harmony, which I definitely am going to talk about more because I'm using stacked fourths in my harmonies, and it can also be used in improvisation as well, but we're going to get there. Okay, so that's a nice overview to get started. How to play the melody, how it sounds, generally how to navigate this song rhythmically, but also the chord changes, the modulations. So let's go into that more, okay? Because we're starting to talk about how we are in C minor, but we modulate for a few bars, for those 4 bars in the middle there. So now the question is, I can play the melody with my right hand. Maybe I'm playing this with a piano trio. I've got bass and drums, so I don't need to play the bass. So, as always, I've got to build some rootless voicings in my left hand. Rootless voicings meaning rather than having to do this, doubling the C for C minor 6, maybe I sub the root for the 9. So I'm adding something to the chord rather than just duplicating something that's already there, that's already being supplied by the bass. So I need to take that concept and bring it through the whole tune. let's just play the basic changes first. So it starts C minor. I'll read what's on the page here, even though there are many ways that you can interpret the basic harmonic progression, especially the way McCoy did it. If you go listen, he had a complete unique approach to him that had to do with his kind of modal quartal, meaning four, his kind of fourths way of playing. We'll talk about it. I've already done it a little bit earlier, but I'm trying to be patient. Okay, so C minor 6. So I'm just playing root position chords right now, doubling the root, playing the root at the bottom, root, third, 5, and 6. C major 6 would be this. So we flat the 3. So we're now there. Now the melody, I'll play along with it. F minor 7. Now it has in parentheses B flat 7 here. And that's probably something that's more applicable to solo changes. You know, if it's something that you might sort of reference in the solo, but I'm pretty sure just about every time, if you focus in on the way the bass is playing, it's always F minor. It's just 2 bars of F minor. That's how I've always heard it. Now D minor 7 flat 5. You will routinely see that chord symbol written that way, but really what it is a half diminished 7. Okay, and I'll just explain that quick. In root position, D, F, which is the flat 3, A flat, which is the flat 5, and C, the lowered 7, the flat 7, or dominant 7, as it's called. So all together. But the reason why you sometimes see minor 7 flat 5 is because we'll look at the chord. It's a minor chord, so minor third. It has a flat 5. And the 7 after the minor means flat 7. So it's all there. But I don't like that way. You see a lot of fake books that have that in it, but when we talk about theory, specifically when we're talking about minor 2-5-1s, which is what is in this tune, the modal DNA of it is telling us that we have this in the key in C minor, we have a lowered 6th sound, which is, remember the scale we talked about, minor. So that's the flat 6. That's very important to the sound, and that is in the half diminished chord. Because if you take just the triad, D diminished triad 1, 3, 5, that's that diminished 5th, that lowered 5th, with the 7 on the top now becomes a half diminished 7. So 2-5-1s in minor 2-5-1s are always a half diminished 2, mostly, usually a half diminished 2 with a 7, then a 5 chord, usually with a flat 9 or some type of altered sound. In this case, it's a sharp 9, sharp 5. Which is one of those chords that's, you know, not necessarily useful to play in root position because it's got a lot of extensions. At this point, we're going to start to talk about rootless voicings, and the voicing I'm playing has 7, sharp 9, third, and sharp 5 in order. So the third is B natural. See, it sounds major. We can tell this is some type of major third chord. But then we add the flat 7, F, and then the altered tones, sharp 9, sharp 5. So the minor 2-5-1, something like that. You know, the voice leading is important, you can play with. Talking about voice leading, that's very important. And it's something I've discussed in this series a lot so far. And once you get familiar enough with it, it's something that you don't necessarily have to break down to the granular level on every single tune you do, because as you will notice, as we all do that play long enough, these tunes are all very similar. They're using the same kind of chord progressions, same kind of extensions, and the resolutions are all the same, generally. just different orders, different types of modulations. You know, every tune has its own uniqueness, but the theory that's governing the movement of these progressions is pretty much the same. So in this case, it's understanding that for the most part, it's a lot of sevens resolving to three, or vice versa. It's always about the thirds and sevens. Those are the most important notes that define a chord as major or minor or some other variation. All of those are just rearranging the 1, 3, 5, 7 stack and coming up with different combinations that make the basic seventh chords that we call them. The seventh chords that are in 95+% of all of the chord changes and standards that make them up, that make up the chord progressions. So back to the idea of voice leading, we could start with the C minor 6 chord, and rather than just playing root position, and jumping all over the keyboard, we start to look for smoother routes between these chords. And in this case, because we're already starting to talk about rootless voicings, we have a bass player with us, we're assuming. We will when I play the track. But you could start with this simple minor 6 chord with the 9 on the top. So really then we might call it a C minor 13. And then at that point, what you're trying to do is keep this voicing within the same general area, the same octave span. And it's a closed position voicing because it's within an octave. And you're trying to find the smoothest route between that chord to the next. And we have to go from C minor 6 to F minor 7. So if we're strictly staying to the chord symbols on the page for now, then our next chord we know we need the minor third, A flat. We need the flat 7, E flat, and the 5th, which doesn't add a lot to it, but it is a chord tone. And then instead of doubling the root, maybe we sub it for the 9, because that's a nice note. Right? So I could go up like that, but actually I could just shift these top 2 notes down. See that? I'm not having to move much. I'm not having to go or even this, which is okay. It's still relatively smooth, but the smoothest thing I can do is that. And why it's working partially is because I'm keeping common tones from one chord to the next in the same place on the keyboard, so that all I have to do is move the other 2 notes. Because E flat and G are both in C minor. That's our 3 and 5, 1, 3, 5. And both those notes are in the next chord as well. We've got the flat 7 and the 9 that I'm adding to give a little more color to the voicing. So all I have to do is change the top 2 notes. So I make sure I have my minor third and then my 5th on the top. Now, I will talk about, like I said, other ways to interpret these chords and give you some more advanced options as this video goes on, but I'm trying to stay strict right now and play what maybe isn't a fully fleshed out version, but is still a totally acceptable way of playing it if you just are reading the chart at face value and just trying to present the tune. You know, that's basically what I'm doing. So and I'm just gonna follow good voice leading, try to make every chord. Now to E flat minor 7 in root position, because this is now we're going to the modulation. Root, E flat, and then 3, 5, 7. Flat 7, flat 3. Same thing, I don't want to double the root, and on minor 7 chords, we already know it's very easy just to sub the root out for the 9. And now you have a really nice rootless voicing. It has all your chord tones in it, and then one color tone. 4 notes, just 4 notes, and that's it. So I could go from it's very important to sometimes hold out your voicings to see how they relate against the melody. Just to see, because in actuality, when I play this, my tendency is going to be to comp very staccato. But, occasionally I might want to, kind of sounds nice to hold the voicings out on the bridge, especially because we're changing keys. So to do a couple footballs, as we call them, like a whole note. Make that short. Yep. So there you go. I will play it with the track now because I've got my voicings, pretty good smooth voice leading going. Going from the 2-5-1 in D flat is really easy because if I start with this Rootless minor 9, E flat minor 9 voicing, to go to A flat, all I have to do is resolve the 7 down to the 3, which then becomes the major 7. So on the 2 chord, it's D flat, flat 7, resolves to the 3rd of A flat, which becomes the major 7. So 2-5-1. And in context, oops. Works really well. Okay, so moving over to our best friend for practicing, ye old iReal Pro. It's like the best, I don't know how much it is now. It used to be only like $10, whatever. It's the best $10 to $20 you'll probably ever spend for practicing. Let's do it. Okay, so I give myself maybe an A- overall, but I had the feeling, decent voicings, good feel. It's actually, I will admit, it's kind of a bit of this kind of a thing to really lock in where those staccato notes happen in the melody and be able to comp at the same time. On the repeat, I did much better with it, So the thing to practice and slow it down, for sure, because it will really help you get a lot of these kinds of accents in here. Those really all should be short. Probably slur the first 2, and then short. So long, long, short. Short, short. Short, long. Short, long. Long, long, short, short, long. Short, long. Short, long. Original lyrics for Blue Bossa that I call short, long. Oh, gosh. I crack myself up. I don't know if I crack up anybody else, but I'm routinely doing some self-cracking around here. So slow it down, just to show you. This is one of the best things you can do in iReal. Of course, you could do it with a metronome. Go on YouTube, find a practice track. There are probably hundreds by this point. But the cool thing here is you can slow down the tempo and it doesn't affect the sound quality of the recording. It just sounds really great. So. Okay, so we're starting to get into improv here. I've waited long enough. I've been patient. To talk about improvisation, the first thing I want to do is check to make sure everything's still recording because I'm nervous. The first thing I want to do is show you a PDF I made that I call an improv guide. And this is a Blue Bossa improv guide. And in it, I show you some of what I would call my experiments in trying to write a one chorus solo for this tune. Basically something that uses a lot of the most important scales and modes that we typically go for in this tune and has some nice development of some ideas and basically could be thought of as like an etude. And I tried to just write one version, but then I kept tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. I've actually been coming back to it for a few days just for fun. It was the kind of stuff I used to do in school and different classes I took. We would write solos in the style of a certain musician, or we'd write our own. Say, hey, okay, write 2 choruses on this tune that you think would be the 2 most perfect choruses you could possibly make. Perfect in quotes, of course, but if you have the time to sit down and write a solo rather than just improvising on the spot, what would you write? What would you write? How would you plan a solo that way if you could? So that's what this does. And as I got into it, I kept making different versions. So I ended up doing 3 versions of my first idea. Then I tried a completely new idea that sort of comes from a different approach in terms of the scales and chords that are being suggested and really the scales and modes, and the concept's different. And then at the end, I have a little cheat sheet that shows you what kinds of scales I was pulling from to write these solos. And I'm not saying this is the only way to approach playing Blue Bossa, but this is just my approach, and I wanted to try with this episode of the series to make something on the front half that you can have at home. You can put on your own phone or tablet, computer, print it out, practice it. If you're a teacher, maybe you're getting your kids ready for a festival or something and you're doing this tune, you can use it for them. I just want to put this resource out there and would love to hear your feedback once you all check it out. All right, let's go to it. Here is the improv guide, Mufasa Bossa. Why? Because I can, and it's funny. Like I said, I crack myself up. On to the third version, which is my favorite. I think it evolved over time and ended up in probably the best place that it could have been by the end. Some of it was just, I would think of a new idea and it would be too good to leave alone, to just forget. And so I had to write another version. But I stopped at 3 because after I played this one a few times, I thought, this is a really nice one chorus. Like if I played this as one chorus of a solo on this tune, a jam session or in a recording session, I'd be like, yeah, that's pretty awesome. I didn't go crazy flashy, but I played some nice melodies. I developed my ideas. There's some good ideas just in and of themselves in it, and it's cohesive and a good chorus. So let's check it out. And I put a little bit of McCoy at the end there, and I'll definitely spend some time breaking that little thing down. And the next solo, which is a different concept altogether, really digs into that McCoy harmony. So wait for that. This one is mostly the same as version 2, but where it changes is in the middle. It's at the bridge, we'll call it, where it goes to D flat, and then the last phrase, the last 4 bars. So that middle phrase, okay, let's break that down. So with that what that phrase right there is doing, it's starting pretty simply, you know, just with a little bit of an E flat melodic minor kind of sound. Because that major 7 is like melodic minor. Because it's a natural 7. But really, simply, if I was going to say it simply, I'm just enclosing the root of the chord. That's my little target note. And then just walking straight up D flat major. But here's where it gets interesting. What's happening is it's starting really diatonic, just with kind of D flat major sound. Then here I go to the flat 9. And then the little progression in that one little moment is sharp 9, flat 9, which wants to resolve to the 5th. So that's what I've got going. Now what scale is that pulling from? Again, this is at the cheat sheet at the end with all the scales that I utilized in different ways. In this case, you could think of it as a diminished scale, type of diminished, or as the altered dominant. What are those? So A flat 7, that's our 5 chord here. Now the diminished scale would be, that's the diminished scale you'd want to use over that dominant chord. That's a half whole diminished because it starts with the half step, then a whole step, half step, whole step in a sequence. But you could also be talking about the altered dominant scale, which starts the same as the diminished scale, but here it goes all whole tone, no more half steps. So I was really thinking more altered dominant because the voicing I'm playing, which is really the same as the one before, A flat 7, flat 9, sharp 5, or flat 13. In this sharp 5 interval, the sharp 5 alteration in the chord really makes me think more altered dominant. Because it has that whole tone sound. But I don't use the whole scale, just a piece of it, just the diminished part in the beginning. But I transition from purely diatonic to altered / diminished. So again, just like that same spot in the other ones, I really wanted to do this, obviously, it was in my head, is creating this little mini progression that just happens as a result of the line in the right hand. And I adjusted my voicing accordingly. And then that's just straight up Parker. That's just straight up Bird. You know, but I liked it, and I kept my 6th scale degree, which is from the melody. Right? Now this ending bit, I threw in just for fun a little McCoy, which McCoy's sound, because the reason why McCoy is so recognizable, when you hear anything with him in it, his playing, you go, oh, that's McCoy. It's because of the way he uses stacked fourths. And in this case, to play over a C minor sound, I can just start on C and stack perfect fourths till I get to E flat, and then I can add a little third on the top. And I can play these patterns just utilizing that shape and trying to take it through. I'll go into this a little bit more when we get to the next solo example because it really utilizes this sound even more. So that's my version 3. I really like the way that chorus sounded. And now on to solo example 2. Now for this one, I tried to think less in the bebop realm, less chromaticism, less extra notes between the scales. I tried just to use the notes that are from the scales that are derived from the melody. So nothing outside the notes from the melody, as much as I could. So let's check this out. I kind of improvised again at the end, but that's the basic idea. So my concept for that was I wanted to write a melody, basically, almost a contrafact on Blue Bossa, because it's sounding like, this one sounds less like something improvised and more like, okay, you wrote a tune. You know, it sounds like I'm writing a new song. But it was a fun way to explore these quartal, quart meaning fourth, or these fourth-based harmonies and chord structures that McCoy is known for. So I start right out with that. And that's the same exact phrase, two-bar phrase, over C minor and then F minor. Now let's break down what's happening here. Modally, this is really pulling from the Dorian mode, which actually we didn't talk about yet in all the minor modes. And it's considered a minor mode because it has a minor third. It starts out with that same 5 notes that most of the minor scales do, 1, 2, flat 3, 4, and 5. But then at the end, it's always those top 4 notes where the scales really differ from one another, usually, at least in this case with the minor scales. And in this one, it just has a natural 5 and 6, and only a flat 7. That's the only note that's altered up top. So it's flat 3 and flat 7. And if you want to know, really want to know, that is the second mode of the major scale. So this is really deriving from B flat major. Start that on C, Dorian mode. So these chords are all derived from the notes of the C Dorian scale. And I'll just give you a way you can explore these sounds on your own, come up with your own structures, because you don't necessarily have to play these preconceived patterns to sound this way. You can just start with the stacked fourths, just 4 notes, C, F, B flat, and E flat, and walk that up the mode and discover what those different voicings sound like. So it's no different than just starting on each different note and walking up the scale. But you're expressing it as a chord, playing them all together. Each note is its own voice played together. And you get some beautiful sounds like this. Any one of them that have a tritone interval in it, like this, or this one, are really fun. And I use all those kinds of sounds in here. So if you have this at home, you get it to practice with, one great thing you could do is turn those 2 bars into an exercise. Try taking it into all the keys eventually. Don't worry about doing all 12 on your first sitting. Maybe just do 2 keys, C and F, which are in the tune, and then try to take it to B flat. That would be B flat. Right? Take it all the way around. So that's what's going on, really, the essence of what McCoy's approach to comping on this. He's not just playing, you know, C minor 6 chord or C minor 13 and then F 13, F minor 13. It's never that simple. His approach comes from his own vocabulary and ear and the way he plays. And that's really what's going on here, is that's the essence of it, is thinking modally, not just read a chord symbol, but thinking, like I wrote here, C Dorian, D-O-R, C Dorian. It's not C minor 7, it's not C minor 11, it's not just C minor 13, it's the whole mode expressed in all these different structures. Like, that is the sound of C Dorian. That is it. So, moving on. Tried to stay with that sound as much as I could, that McCoy sound. Then here, I didn't read the rhythm exactly right, but I love rushing that. 1, 2, 3. Actually moving it back a little bit and just making it faster. I like that. But I didn't write it in. I don't know why. Comping the melody, and just trying to make the changes using the basic scales. There's no chromatic pitches outside of D flat major here. It's very important to try practicing to improvise that way whenever you can. Don't immediately go to this. And chromatic and just blurring the lines between. See if you can just improvise. I cheated already. If you swing and you give it some attitude, you don't even need chromaticism. Of course, it's nice. We want to add it eventually when, and we want to be able to do both. You want to not always have to resort to licks you learned from the Omni book. You want to be able to just know what the root scales and modes are. You also want to know the chord tones, be able to arpeggiate them. And combine that with modes. There was not one pitch outside of D flat there. So that was my goal with this example. Then the end just continues to kind of quote the melody. With this little, I didn't get it right the first time, but here's the last phrase. 1, 2, 3. So that's just taking the same stacked fourth idea and moving it up a minor third. And really, all I'm doing is harmonizing this blues idea. Because that's kind of blues scale, right? But then harmonized with stacked fourths. And I love that. Using that chordal stacked fourth sound, but using it in parallel motion to evoke a blues sound. It's very cool. That'll never go out of style. McCoy forever, right? A genius for the rest of time. People will never stop studying his sound, because how many musicians can you think of where you play like that? You might go, and everybody goes, McCoy. And here is the scale cheat sheet, which I'll just play through a little bit. We've already talked about these scales, but C melodic minor, with an appropriate voicing underneath, C minor 6, which would works great with that scale. Then C minor pentatonic, which I kind of used in the second solo example, this one. With a couple other notes from the Dorian mode, but it's just a good scale to know, because you could take the approach of playing pentatonic over this, especially with those stacked fourths, sounds great. I'm just trying to keep it simple here, but it's a great sound that you could use. It's very different from the using scalar kind of sounds moving, a traditional scale like a major scale or melodic minor that moves in stepwise motion. And it has those half steps that make us want to resolve. Where the pentatonic scale doesn't have any of that. It's just different because there aren't any half steps. It's all thirds and whole steps. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, we got the minor pentatonic, then C Dorian, with the C minor 7 as the chord underneath. Simple, root position. Then C Aeolian, which is the same, just lower the 6th scale degree, so it's A flat. Then going to F, similar scales, F melodic minor, F minor pentatonic. Then the 2 Locrian scales, regular Locrian and Locrian natural 2, which I used for that closing phrase. Then, other than that, we have the harmonic minor, which remember has that kind of weird little minor third interval. So here it is, kind of in a 2-5 situation. Similar to how I used it. Then the D flat major scale, which in that solo example too, I used exclusively. I tried not to use any chromatic pitches. And that's how it sounds over E flat minor 7. And then finally, the A flat altered dominant scale. Which came from the There's something I didn't do when I was playing them. I kept playing it this way, but I didn't write it in the score just because I wanted to keep it simple. But I loved adding this chromatic passing tone between E flat and D flat. So the full phrase, see if I can remember it. That was with the Parker one, but then the other one, just like that. Yeah, it makes me want to keep playing because, and the way it resolves on the 6, just gets me right there. So there you go. So for this resource, what would I recommend you do? You could definitely start with just reading through it. For a while, you may use my solo examples as inspiration for you when you improvise. For a while, you may find you're almost just kind of regurgitating that. But what hopefully will happen is you'll start to come up with your own ideas from changing what you're reading. That's why I don't judge myself when I'm reading solos like that or transcriptions when I change things, because that's good. Because the goal is not to just regurgitate a solo someone else wrote every time you improvise. You want to make up your own story. You want to make up your own ideas and become familiar enough with all the things we've been talking about, the scales, the chords, how they relate to each other, the modes, the modulations, being able to arpeggiate chord tones, play the scales and modes in different patterns, and be so familiar with all of that that you can start to come up with your own ideas and keep them going like I have. So maybe what you do at some point when you get familiar enough with my solos, maybe you start to add some things yourself to them, do some little tweaks, and then you use the scales at the end as your raw materials to write your own solo. Don't just improvise. Don't just put I reel on 20 repeats and just play chorus after chorus after chorus that sound exactly the same. And when you listen back, you're like, I don't like how I sound. Stop that. Stop practicing just that way and do this. Start from scratch and plan a solo. Say, I'm going to use all that I know about Blue Bossa that I've learned from this and that I've connected with my ears and the theory knowledge, and write a chorus and write it out and start with that. And I know that if you do that exercise like I did years ago in school, because I had many teachers do these kinds of exercises with me as a part of class or private lessons, it will help you sound better. Before you know it, these kinds of ideas and this kind of development of ideas will start coming out in real time for you, which is the goal. That's always the goal. Okay, so now that I've done that, I think I'll wrap up by playing one final version. I'll do a good number of repeats. I'll play the melody a couple times through, which is usually what we do because it's so short, as I said, and close it out with the melody again. So let's see, maybe I want to do, I don't know, 2 choruses for the melody, repeat. How many times would I have to repeat? Maybe 4 times. So that would give me to 6. 8 would be playing the melody twice more at the end. So I'll do 4 choruses and try to explore all the things that we've been talking about here. So that's playing the melody with chords in the left hand. Maybe I'll do a little bit of block chord stuff. We'll see where it goes. I'll be a little more free this time. And then trying to stay with the melody when I improvise, see as much as I can, either quoting it pretty much directly or at least just using it as a guidepost so it's always there, and then we'll talk about that after. And I'm going to use more of the range of the keyboard and really perform and show you what it's like when this stuff comes together and you can express yourself a little more fully. And let's see how it goes. Oh yeah, maybe I won't love how I stuck that landing at the end, but I had a lot of moments during that was like, I better start over again. But I really liked where I started going in my second chorus. It kind of surprised me, to be honest. But I went with the flow. I started playing something that was a little, you know, these kind of scales and this kind of faster double time stuff, and I just let it go. And I think I'll like listening back to that. I was ready for it to stop. Oh, man. Okay, so again, not perfect. Impromptu, playing along with iReal Pro. But yes, I was happy with a lot of what happened. I explored, to be honest. I just was free and did what I was feeling today in this moment after sitting here for a long time. I really liked the way I started my solo, I think. I tried to do that thing. I tried to keep it more in the flavor of the melody, but other material started coming up. And actually, when I kept thinking I was at the last repeat and I wasn't tracking it correctly. But when I got towards the end, I started to bridge it to a little bit more chordal soloing. And I had some stuff I really liked that happened in that. Dynamics, that's something I didn't talk about yet today, but you can, especially when you're playing alone, if you're in a piano trio, for instance, piano, bass, drums, you can be very free with the dynamics and take it wherever you want and use the top of the keyboard, the bottom, use the whole thing and really express. I kind of found moments to throw in little surprises or kind of a little, you know, kind of more forceful jab or accent, something to wake you up a little bit. That kind of stuff, you know. But yeah, the chordal harmonies. One thing that I want to try to be able to do when I do these is control what my approach is. So I'll play 2 more choruses just to demonstrate. I can play one chorus where I just improvise using notes from the melody, keep it real diatonic, real simple, and then I can play another one where I just go full bebop and use maybe a bit more complex voicings. So let me show you. So one simple chorus and then one more complex chorus. Turning it up. You know, I mean, yeah, you could go full Oscar on this. You could stay McCoy. You can stay more tuneful. You know, kind of go the Kenny Dorham route. That's why at the end of the day is, I know this tune gets overplayed. I know it's kind of got that vibe, you know, where if you call it on a gig with serious people, they're going to go, you know. But no, this is an awesome song. It's so cool. It's just 16 bars, and there's so much you can do with it. And the modulation to D flat is so cool, you know, because you can kind of get in front of it. You know, when I get to, I love doing this when you get to D minor, the D half diminished. So there, what I'm doing is just a simple sidestep. I'm getting in front of the 2 chord, D flat, and doing an arpeggiation of E minor 7. Ahead of it while we're still on C minor. So C minor, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. E minor, E flat minor. And yeah, it clashes. It's, if you were to play it as a static voicing, it ain't gonna work. Unless you want to scare people. But in context of the tune, it sounds great. Let me show you. So I started getting into the chordal stuff too. So like I was saying, the melody being harmonized in perfect fourths, you can go to town with that stuff, man. See, something flashy, but a resolution. Gotta end the phrases. Ending phrases is so important. Maybe I'll do like a 10-hour lesson on that one day. But anyway, this has been a very long episode, but a hell of a lot of fun for me. Hopefully for you as well. Please subscribe. Please pick up the improv guide if you want to, you know, get a little bit more deeper into this, get into my mind on this, play around with those solos I wrote, and maybe come up with some of your own. Please continue to comment, like, subscribe, share, follow me on all the things, Substack, Instagram, TikTok. I'm not on Blue Sky yet. Maybe I will be one day. I don't know. I don't really know anything about what goes on over there in the blue skies. Blue sky, I don't know you. Nothing but blue skies for me. I don't know, but we'll see. Anyway, I appreciate the support. Appreciate all of you contributing out there. My hope is still to build into something that is maybe subscription-based. Maybe it's more resources, maybe it's video courses, I don't know. I'm learning all the time and trying to figure out how best to share what I know with the world. And I'm just excited that I'm finally on this adventure, and I'm glad you're here with me. So thank you so much for watching. See you next time.